You cover it up. It seems like no one is any the wiser. You're living it up. All they see is you taking things higher. Are you filling your cup? You know we can finally give it a rest. Are you gonna erupt? Is it survival or is it success?
Hello and welcome to When Survival Looks Like Success. I am here today with not just one, but two guests for a special two-part episode. One of them is on her phone because she ain't never not on her phone, but I know you're seeing that because it's on video.
Got you on camera.
she's like, I didn't know I was being filmed.
You forgot about that, didn't you?
Yeah, you're being filmed. So I'm here today with Krystal and Anaya Merriweather. You know, up north, people were calling her Mayweather, and now it's stuck in my head. Merriweather. And we are here today for a special two-part episode on disenfranchised grief, which is something that I knew about but really didn't know the terminology for, and have kind of been down the rabbit hole because one of our guests was talking about it. And even though these were originally planned to be two separate episodes, I actually thought they flowed really well together because disenfranchised grief is essentially something that can happen over so many different circumstances with so many different topics. And a lot of people are connected and united by it and yet just don't really recognize it. And so I thought this would be a great two-part episode to cover a really big spectrum shared today and, impart wisdom on those of you that are out there suffering. So welcome to the show, ladies.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
So, Anaya, tell us a little bit about who you are, how we know each other, and what you do for a living.
Okay. Well, my name is Anaya Merriweather. I am a licensed esthetician and CBD skincare formulator. How me and Jessica met, I make extra money. I also invest into food companies, and so I was doing a delivery for Chef Dunny. Shout out to the vegan baddies.
Vegan baddies.
Yeah, and she wanted food at this particular time, and I delivered to her spot.
And she delivered.
And I was like, this is a nice spot, you know. I might could get jiggy with this, you know. And she was like, yeah, all open arms, open door, big open door policy. And so I was just grateful and thankful to be in such a great space and a very great city because I love Ferndale. I also went to high school there too. So it's just amazing to be able to meet people and also do business with them.
And Krystal Capizzo, tell a little bit about how we know each other, what you do for a living, and if you can give a brief explanation on what disenfranchised grief is so people aren't in suspense anymore when they listen to this episode.
Yeah, it's very suspenseful.
It is.
So I met Jessica back in 8th grade, way back Oakwood Middle School.
Whew.
Yeah, a long time ago.
How long ago was that?
We're not talking about that. Too long ago. And we've been friends since then. I'm a massage therapist, and I kind of dabbled in other things over the years. And I quit the corporate world about a year ago, and I kind of panicked when I did it. And I called Jessica and said, hey, I don't know what to do right now. I just quit this job, and I think I might regret it. And she said, well, I need a massage therapist, and you're a massage therapist, so come on in. And I've never been happier and never regretted making my decision. So that's how I know Jessica, and that's what I do. And so disenfranchised grief is basically grief that is not validated or recognized as, you know, like if you lose a pet or you have a loss of a relationship or a pregnancy loss, like those kinds of things that people don't necessarily think you should take all the time in the world to grieve about or even really recognize. And it's really important that you do grieve those things. And I didn't really know too much about it until May, when my dog passed away. And for those that don't know, Gemma was my dog for like 12 years. She was like my kid. She was with me through a cross-country move, like every major thing in life that you can imagine. She was there. So basically the only constant in my life, when she passed away, it was not so sudden. She had cancer, so we knew it was coming, but we didn't have as much time as we thought. So it was a little sudden, but when I was grieving, it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I knew it was going to be hard, but it wasn't, it's like I was not prepared to go through that. And luckily I had a good support system. Not a lot of people are fortunate enough to have a good support system or a job where they are given that, like, take a week off and do what you have to do. And I had that, but a lot of people don't. And so I was given this book while I was going through that process, and it really touched on disenfranchised grief and basically validated that these things happen, and it is okay to grieve them. And, you do have a reason to grieve, and grieving is still a process. No matter what you're grieving, it's still a part of you, and it's normal to grieve those things. And it actually was written by a therapist. Her name is Julianne Corbin. And it has a lot of stories about her patients, about like how they went through this and they didn't have an outlet to go through it, or like, nobody understood, well, like, it's just a dog kind of attitude, like, get over it, or it's just a cat, or it's just a job. Or so there was a lot of explaining about how the grief isn't recognized. Is if you lose a human loved one, everyone expects you to take a month off of work, or as much time as you need.
And even then, there's like a stigma with it. Like, you'll get taken more seriously if it's your immediate family.
Right.
You'll get taken more seriously if it's someone essentially like directly above, below, or next to you.
Right.
Right? Like across. But what if the closest person in your life was like your great aunt? Or what if the closest person in your life is your fourth cousin?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why is society deeming who should have that impact for you?
Exactly.
And what the impact of that loss is going to be? Because that doesn't even make sense. Like, there's no handbook, and we're going to get into that in a minute with Anaya, but there's no handbook on who is going to mean the most in your life.
There isn't at all. And when you lose someone that, like, if it's not a grandparent, it's not a parent or a sibling or husband, wife, what have you, it's hard because you kind of feel guilty that you are mourning, and then you kind of feel guilty that you're not mourning enough because society tells you, okay, it's been this amount of time, you should be over it by now. But in this book, it also tells you, like, grief is a process and there is no timeline. Everyone grieves differently. Everyone grieves at their own pace, and that can be different for so many people. And it kind of just made it sound like you're not alone, and you have, you're not alone with your grief, even though sometimes grief is a very lonely place.
Yeah.
And there aren't a lot of resources for disenfranchised grief. So you can find a therapist or grief support meeting for, like, the loss of a husband or a wife or a parent. You can't go to a therapist or a support group and say, hey, I lost my dog and I want to talk about how I feel, because society looks at you as like, we're here because we lost, like, people close to us. You're here because you lost a dog, So it's just that way people in society kind of look at you if it's not something they feel is, like, as important as someone that they would grieve, if that makes sense.
So one of the most popular Facebook posts I ever did was this one I did on Mother's Day, which is coming to be Mother's Day this weekend. It was a couple years back. And sorry I have my Toni Braxton voice today because I got allergies. But it was a post that I did about mourning the loss of never having children. Mm. And it was different because I never wanted them. But I still mourned that loss of not going through that experience. Right. And it was shared really, really wide. It was, like I said, I think my most popular Facebook post. And that's an area in grief we just don't touch on, is the loss of something you didn't have.
Exactly.
So, Anaya, tell us a little bit about your childhood, because you have experience with that arena.
I do, yeah. I grew up with a single parent. My mom definitely worked hard with keeping me sheltered and not feeling like I needed that other side, which was a father. She kept me busy in a lot of activities. I was a part of a choir, the Boys and Girls Club. I played volleyball, and with being busy and having home chores, it was like I never really needed anything as long as I ate and had a roof over my head. But I realized as I got older, you know, you start dating and you start realizing that you need some help. And it's like, okay, yeah, we're supposed to have a father figure, and all right, now this is the time where I feel like I may have needed you, or could have needed you, or could have used some advice from you, or even have a phone call. So yeah, I grew up without a father. It was times where within like 8 to 10 years of me being born, he was in a penitentiary. He was locked up. He was released around the age of 12 or 13. I never really seen him. Still never got a chance to meet him. But around the age of 24, I mistakenly saw him. We shared some words and was able to, I guess, see each other for the first time. But it was about 10, 20 minutes. It wasn't long. I was a little startled. Therefore, I left the house. But as I grew up, I just realized that it took an impact. Because
did
as
you
a child,
see yourself in him when you met him? Like, did you, when you first, like, really saw him and heard him and talked to him, were you like, did you notice any similarities, or were you like, no, this is very much a stranger to me?
I did notice that my dad, he has this hustle mentality about him.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was a trait that I really took upon from him. And he knows how to talk. He knows how to get what he wants and things like that in a business manner. So I feel like that was something that I was able to relate to with him. He's very understanding to a certain degree. And I feel like that's something that I did pick up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit, this is going to be like the same question for both of you. Tell me a little bit about the moment you realized I'm mourning a loss, and what you went through mentally in your head. So not like what you did, because you talked a little bit about distraction, and distraction is a common thing to deviate us away from actually processing grief.
It's like a coping mechanism in a way.
It is. And if you followed the whole series, you know we did an episode on grief before. But I wanted to get a little bit, and this is not going to be the last episode we do on grief, because grief is a huge, huge, huge spectrum. But so tell me a little bit about when the loss hit you, when the awareness, the impact, the knowledge of the loss or the losing hit you. Like, what did you feel like?
When I first started to feel that initial, like, okay, this is mourning, I felt, at first, I felt relief, because I felt like, okay, she's not suffering. And then it was just a roller coaster of different emotions. At first I felt the relief, and then I felt guilt, and then I felt just numb. And then I felt the strongest feeling I felt was just this emptiness. And then just like depression, like I just didn't want to get out of bed. And part of it was I didn't know what how do I do anything? She was part of my everyday routine. Like now I have to start all.
It's the smallest things people don't realize when it comes to grief.
It really is.
Like when I lost my cat, that was like, honestly, I think it was the hardest loss of my life. Like by far. And I've lost an insane amount of people. I mean, I can't even count, like 50 realistically. And so, but my cat was the hardest loss. And it was because there was so much that was integral into your everyday. Mm-hmm. And you're like, wait, I got to create a new life now.
A whole new
a new
pattern,
ritual,
a new
routines,
yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
That is a lot more than people realize. And so I do understand to some degree when people run out and get another dog, right? Or run out and get another cat, because they're like, they actually just don't even know.
Right.
How to function in that space.
Right.
They're like, wait, what? I was doing this at this time and this at this time and buying this and even budgeting, just, crazy things like that.
Right.
And you can feel that like re-triggering of the loss every time you go to do something that now you're not doing.
Exactly. Well, in the book too, they mention how that like our brains are wired to like protect us from the grief process, because it's a feeling that it's uncomfortable and nobody wants to go through the process of grief. So it was saying that a lot of times when that happens, people will want to run out and get another dog or, another cat or do this or do that, because they don't want to deal with the grief. And they feel like if they have the distraction. Which that new pet it won't.
It's gonna be
bother them.
It's gonna be if I drank, which I don't, and neither does Krystal.
Not anymore.
But if we drank,
I wanted to.
every
at that
time we
point.
say the word distraction, we'd be taking a shot. So if you're, not sober like us,
you don't have to deal with.
then if you're listening to this episode, every time we say distraction, you can take a
You can
shot
take
and
a
let
drink.
us know how
Is this turning
drunk
into
you
a
are.
drinking game?
Where's the liqueur? So, no, I'm kidding.
I'm not going to encourage that.
No.
I think people in recovery would not be happy with
No,
me. But
we definitely don't.
needless to say, if you are, or you're like, taking a hit, whatever. Just saying. Okay. But yeah, distractions are, I have a love and a hate with distraction. I think sometimes distraction can really help, especially if you have a mental disorder, to break the loop. Like with my OCD, having a distraction helps because then I'm not hyper focused on what I can't control.
Right.
And instead I'm watching One Tree Hill. But
Healthy
I
distractions.
like One Tree Hill.
I never watched it back
Shout out
then.
to Chad Michael Murray.
Chad Michael Murray.
What's he doing?
Looking fine. That's what he's doing. It's the same question, Anaya. Tell us what it was like. Because for you, I wonder, I'm actually curious to know the answer. When did you feel the impact of not having that relationship in your life?
Honestly, it happened during the dating process between, my teenager years and fully blossoming into an adult. It was like shitty men kept coming my way, or I was attracting shitty men. And it just was like, all right, something got to change
Like a
here.
vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Something has to change here. And I realized that, okay, do I even know what kind of change I want? What am I supposed to look at?
Did you have a lot of other male role models? Because sometimes
did.
when people say they didn't have a father figure or a mother figure, but they have those other
Strong.
paternal, maternal figures.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I had my coach, my volleyball coach. He was definitely a father figure for me to continue to be a volleyball player, and get into college and be great. And that was where I gained my emotional intelligence and how to be competitive but have friendly competition. And I just took out literally all of that into the court. With my learning to try to get some closure, because that was what it was after a certain point of time, was that after dating for so long, I just felt like I needed closure. And it was like, okay, I don't know, where am I supposed to get it from? Yeah, I have my mom. I had that. I had some really cool, great uncles too. But on the emotional side, no one could really tap into that. I didn't really have that. So I just threw it all out on the court. That was it for me. That was my closure, is to throw it out in the court. And I had like male friends growing up that were like, are my brothers to this day. That's really all that I had. That's it. We just had fun. Turn up. Rockstar life.
So did you, growing up, did you have a lot of other people in your life that were growing up without a father figure? Like, what was that comparison like? Because, as human nature knows, and it probably says in that book, which I haven't read, but, we compare ourselves. We seek ourselves in others. So, did you have other people that experienced that?
Well, I would say like my aunt, she's like 5 years older than me. So she's like my sister. My granddad passed away at a very young age. So her and I definitely shared that experience. So looking through that experience, we was able to share a moment where we did have like a father figure like type. And then we also experienced the home without our grandfather.
Yeah.
So it did definitely take a turn with, I felt like, our attitudes and our outlook of what we wanted to be after a certain time as we grew older and what kind of goals we wanted to meet. So I definitely think that it had an impact on the people before me, for sure.
So Anaya and I were just at this thing for the YMCA called Women's Wellness Weekend. And I host these meditations there. And the meditation this time, which I don't plan. I plan when I get there. Whatever moves me. And then I just spitball. I might write down a few words or notes or quotes, and then I just spitball. And then it comes out magical. Magic. Beep, beep. That's me tooting my own horn. But the topic that I selected was like breaking the chains of attachment. When it comes to grieving, whether it's grieving a loss of something that was never possible or never had, or it was something that, you know, you lost unexpectedly, or something that you lost that people aren't putting importance in. A lot of times what people are grieving is their outcomes, their expectations, the future, what could have been, what might have been. It's a lot of the what ifs. So for both of you, tell me a little bit about some of those what ifs. What are some things that you're like, damn, like I didn't get to do, I wish I could have done? Or things that you're like, oh, I thought I would have more time? Or what are some of those things that like ruminated in your head, because they are attachments? And so that's one of the hardest things, is letting go of that, right?
I think honestly that was what was the hardest part about the process, was like when I found out Gemma got sick and had cancer, we made this little bucket list of all these little things we were going to do with her. We only did like 4 of them because we kept thinking, well, we'll have more time.
Animals are so unpredictable, because like I know when my cat got cancer, I didn't know she had cancer. They thought it was just sinus or allergies, which is not making me feel good about having sinus and allergy problems right now. But she ended up having like a nasal tumor, and I didn't know that till after she died, and they you know, biopsied and everything. But it was like so fast. It was healthy kitty to that was just sneezing a little bit to dead in 2 months. And it was like, because when they're smaller, and the smaller the animal, the faster disease like that spreads. Yeah.
And that's what basically what happened with Gemma. We found out the week before Christmas that, and she had had this issue since like this time last year, and they were treating for the wrong things, and no one can figure out what was going on. And then we went to the ultrasounds and found out the week before Christmas she had bladder cancer, and they gave us 6 to 12 months, and she only had 3 after her diagnosis. But that was also something I kept thinking about, like, what if I would have brought this up sooner? Would they have been able to find it sooner? Would I have more time? And so I think that was the hardest part of like that in my head. What if I would have done something differently? Or what if I did something sooner? Would she have had more time? And the whole, like you mentioned, the attachment to like this plan. We all have this plan in our head of like the future, and what are we going to do with the future in 5 years, 10 years?
And with animals, it's really different because, well, and people too, because like assisted suicide is not legal here. So we're in Michigan, in case you didn't know that already. And so we all just want to go in our sleep, right? Like as humans, as you know, owning pets. Right. We all just want that. That's like the best thing,
the most
in
peaceful
the world,
way,
right?
Natural way.
So having to make decisions really affects those outcomes and the what ifs and the, you know, attachment.
Right. Yeah, that was the hardest thing, I think, was just the not having her around because she was around for so many different things of my life, and now this is like a whole new era. I have all of these new things that I'm going to be doing in life without her. So that was the hardest thing of like, how do I envision my life without her in it?
Yeah.
So that was, I think, harder than actually losing her.
Yeah. Same question, Nia. Like, what went through your head? The what ifs, the attachments, the possible futures, all that.
Yeah. Like for me, again, my mom kept me sheltered in a sense and kept me very busy to the point where I felt like I didn't really need anything. But as I got older, you know, getting into the dating field, it was like, okay, maybe I could have had a better experience if I had an example. Maybe I could have had a better experience if I talked to my dad about dating, or if I had that example to be like someone, particularly like my dad. My mom used to always say, hey, the guy that you're dating or you're supposed to be with is supposed to treat you like your father. And I never truly had that experience. So it's just like now I just hold myself up to the standard where it's like I know I have to treat myself well. If I don't treat myself well, who will? Who will do it?
I can 100% attest that I have the most amazing father in the entire world.
I love my spa dad.
He's amazing. He parents all of my friends. And
yes.
I still ended up dating a sea of losers. So no, free will. Yep. Has a lot to do with that.
Oh.
Like, you can still have the best parent in the world and date a sea of morons.
Decisions.
Yeah, that all, like, guys that just treat you like garbage. So,
I just felt like, you know, maybe I could have been married by now. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I do know that my experience made me tougher. It made me have a lot of strength in who I am and continue on with my purpose, and that I have to continue with the self-care. Shout out to Breathe, Bodywork and Beautification, because it's always some self-care stuff going on, and that's really where it stems from for me.
And we take care of each other too. When we see each other struggling, we're always there. So it's like the family we never had for ourselves is like our work family. I feel like too, which is really important.
Yeah.
We're
Shout out to our spa dad and our spa mom.
Oh, my parents, man. My mom listens to every episode, and so sometimes I have to like say, I'm sorry, Mom, for what I'm about to say on here, because I'll be talking about like sex or being topless somewhere, and they have to be
Hey,
like,
you
I'm
were made
sorry.
somehow, right?
I'm like, I'm sorry. But we are going to talk in the second half a little bit about community and network and how that works together. But before we wrap up with this like first section, because this is a 2-part episode on grief, tell me a little bit about where you see yourself in a year from these points. Like, where is your vision of where you see yourself in a year in this term, like talking about grief, talking about losses, what's not happening? Do you see yourself like right now Krystal's fostering a dog. Do you see yourself adopting? Do you see yourself fostering or donating more time? And Anaya, do you see yourself developing a further relationship with your dad? Like, where is that? Because we were talking about the what ifs, so I kind of want to finish up this episode with the what ifs.
Yeah, I think definitely. Honestly, after Gemma died, I did not think I was going to want anything to do with another dog. Not because I don't love doggies and I didn't want a dog for myself, but just because I felt like I was almost like not honoring Gemma by like getting another dog, or like I wouldn't be able to love that dog enough.
Like you're cheating on her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
cheating on her.
Honestly, I feel like because
Gemma was a possessive dog.
I was the one and only mom for her.
A possessive dog.
She did not like to share me.
She chased off, like Krystal would try to foster another dog, and she'd be chasing him off. Like, no,
she was giving him
the hell out of here.
Stink eye. Like, don't you come in my couch? Don't you?
Wow.
You're not staying here.
Territorial.
Yeah, she was. She was my child. But when I honestly, because I feel like I was able and fortunate enough to go through the grieving process, like I went through all the stages. I feel like I got most of that out, and I got to the acceptance stage of like, okay, now I'm able to, accept that I had this dog. She was this great thing in my life. She taught me to be a better person in a lot of ways. I think she would approve if I went to the shelter and took a dog that would not have necessarily made it out, to give that dog some love that it didn't know. So that's where I'm at, and I feel like something good can come out of a bad situation, and I'm fostering a dog, and I'm trying to get her a home, but she can also stay with us as long as she likes, because she's getting a little attached to my boyfriend. And so I think where I want to see myself in a year, I want to do more grief. Like, I was finding out like grief support meetings, I was finding out that there really isn't a place that you could really go there. You don't, like, there's tons of AA meetings everywhere for
you should create it.
That was what I was going to get into.
That's going to be in the next part. So
two.
we're forcing you to hold out till part 2 to hear the actual plans. But Anaya, same question.
What was the question?
Where do you see yourself?
Like, especially with like the what ifs, like do you see yourself in terms with your father? Like, do you see yourself reaching out, having a relationship? Do you see yourself keeping that where it's at? Like, where are your what ifs?
Truthfully, the what ifs, I feel like it's kind of broad. It's more so what we would want. Mm-hmm. But if we were speaking what if, I mean, he would have to read my book first. I know that's first things
That'll
first.
be in part 2 as well.
Part 2.
I can't develop a relationship after with this big age and with someone not being in my life. That's not gonna
take.
How
old are you? Because no one out here knows. And you look
well,
really
I'm
young.
in my 20s. You know what I'm saying? But I'm over 21. Know that. Yeah.
So because she also mentioned she was single. So in case you're out there and you're watching on YouTube, Anaya is over 21 and single.
You know, I'm over 21 and yeah.
Are you ready to mingle?
I
Single,
feel like
ready to mingle.
I feel like I'm a very spirited person, free-spirited person. So I'm down for a good time. But I do feel like after not being in my life for so long, it can't take just one sit down. It can't just take one conversation.
Yeah.
So therefore, I feel like if anything were to be developed, it'll have to be after I launch my book, and making sure that, you know, my father has read it and understood it from the front to the back, from the back to the front. And then at that point, you know, yeah, we can have a conversation, and then maybe things can move forward from there.
Follow-up question before we conclude. You know, we were talking, it didn't mean to go in that way about dating and stuff like that. Is that something you would seek from a partner, someone that also went through that similar experience?
Within not having a mother or a father?
Either or. I would say just growing up without a parental figure, but let's say in this case, mother.
I would say it depends. It depends if that person has really went through that shadow work or like that healing process to understand what they are going through and what present moment that made them emotional. Like really asking the same questions you're asking us. Like, when was that moment you felt abandoned or like you was missing that piece? If that person is understanding, you know, with their process and what they went through, then yeah, I feel like at that point we will have something in common.
Okay, well, thank you for being on the show and participating in part 1 of our part 2 episode on disenfranchised grief. I will make sure that their social links are in our bios and pages, and we're also going to make sure we include the name of the book that Krystal was reading for anyone that wants to go along and purchase it. I really should become an Amazon influencer so I can get some kickbacks from that. Amazon affiliates, I don't know what you're like sleeping on. Come on now. So anyways, take care, my friends, and stay tuned for part 2 that will be dropped in just a few weeks.